Good morning, this is Jack Charting the Markets, and this is a pre-market webinar for the morning of Thursday, the 24th of April. My disclaimer, I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some of what I'm doing and learn from it, transfer it to your own charts. I'm not here to issue trading signals. Right. Things are going pretty well so far on this scenario here. I've got a few things to note. We were finding a lot of resistance at the daily middle bands yesterday, and obviously if we're going to go higher, that will need to be broken. On the bigger picture webinar last night, I was talking about a back test of the weekly pivot, and we've seen that on ES and in Q, I think. So we'll get to that in a minute. Are these the bear flags that I was talking about? No. We would need to go higher for that. We'll need to break over the daily middle bands. Are we capable of seeing that happen? Well, Trump's making encouraging noises. He seems to be at least paying some attention to the stock market now, and not just talking about necessary pain, but actually modifying what he's saying in relation to what's happening in the markets and what he's being told. So that actually could mean that we get a significantly longer rally here. But at the moment, I'm looking for the bear flag options, and we would need to go higher for those. And at the moment, I think the setup for getting higher on those isn't bad at all. NQ came back and back tested the weekly pivot again. Could it go a bit lower? Yes. Doesn't need to, though. RTY, we had already had a higher high on the rally. So we're in flag territory. Do we have any decent trend lines here? We do not. But I will be coming to the daily middle bands, which is where we were finding resistance yesterday. YM, this has been the slower off the ground here. I'm wondering whether that's mainly about Boeing here, which is not a particularly good place. I was working up the chart on that this morning. I actually got a beautiful triangle here. This is just gorgeous. A, B, C, D, partial AV, breakdown. And the obvious target is to go down to 89, which I have to say, with all the Boeing orders being cancelled worldwide, I think that's an obvious thing to see. So I think that's dragging, among other things, on the Dow at the moment. So this has been more muted, but I'm still pretty optimistic about the setup for going higher. On DAX, we've got a 60-minute sell signal fix. That's the only one, so I'm not sure how seriously to take that, but we have seen a bit of a retracement on that so far. ESTX, both DAX and ESTX have made higher highs already. Okay, let's have a look at the bigger picture charts. All right, now looking through at the daily middle bands first. On ES, we saw a close slightly below it, but on SPX, we had a close at 5375, and that was 9 handles below the daily middle band at 5384. So we had a good test of that yesterday, but it failed to close above it, and pretty much that's the picture from the others as well. On Qs, we closed on it, basically 454.56 against 453.41, very, very slightly higher, but not enough to actually constitute a significant break in my view. On Dia, we saw a close slightly below 395.91 against 401.79, but again, we've been testing it during the day. Looking at IWM, we've got daily middle band at 189.92, and we saw a break very marginally over it, a close very marginally over it at 190.25. So we're getting encouraging signs that we might see a break above, but you can see also, although I am watching this as well, with this declining resistance trend line was exactly hit yesterday. We do have a potential fail level here at the daily middle bands, and we haven't seen a break over yet. So I am watching that, but I think on the bigger picture, what I'm looking at is, on the slightly smaller picture, what I'm looking at is the possible flags forming here. We broke over declining resistance on IWM, and we broke over it on Qs yesterday, which was encouraging. I've got the obvious target trend line here. Now, these don't have to necessarily be the obvious target trend lines, but a lot of the time they would be. The obvious ones aren't necessarily the ones you end up with, but a lot of the time they are. And we've made pretty good progress towards this. I've got that currently in about the 198 area. Let's have a look at the others. And let's have a look at SPX. SPX, we haven't broken over declining resistance yet. We've got a nice looking IHS, which has broken up with the target in the 5500 to 5525 area. I'm liking it. So if we get to that target, that should get us over the declining resistance, and the obvious next target would be this trend line here, which is currently at about the 56.20 area. Looking at the Qs, we broke over the declining resistance again. We had an inverted head and shoulders here. That's broken up with a target in the 68 to 69 area. And again, I'm not seeing much reason to think that it isn't going to make this target. Ideally, the ideal trend line I've drawn in here, these all have one obvious trend line, not two, otherwise I've drawn in two. And I'm hoping that at least a couple of them can make it to it. Qs, I've got that target currently in about the 481 area. Looking at Dia, this one, the declining resistance is the shallowest because the way this has declined has been rather different. So while this has been more muted, we've actually got a less ambitious target, so that fits. We've got an IHS here. It's broken up. It's good. We've got a target in about the 408.5 area, and we've got this we've got this possible resistance trend line at about the 411 area. I'm feeling pretty good about the prospects for actually reaching these. We will see how that goes. All right, let's have a look at DAX. DAX has recaptured the daily middle band with some force, and Nikkei is back slightly over it. I think these are just leading the pack slightly, and the American indices will likely go a bit over in the next few days as well. All right, let's have a look at DX. DX, we did hit a big support trend line. I've been talking about that every day pretty much. So and we are seeing a bit of a rally here. I don't have a huge amount of support for this on the daily chart. We didn't have any positive divergence on the US dollar daily chart, but we do have some negative divergence in the RSI 5 sell signal fixed on the EUR/USD chart, which of course is 57% of the index, and generally speaking, they would move in fairly close mirror images of each other. So I'm thinking we may well see some more upside here. I'm thinking bigger picture, the trend line I'm looking at here, it's important to stress that while I've been talking about this as a potential setup to break down, it's important to stress that actually this is a bull flag. So 70% of the time, these would normally break up, and what I would be expecting to see is a retest of this high here. But Trump's been talking about sending down the dollar and how US exports would be more competitive in the event the dollar went down. The dollar's been too high, so I'm thinking we might actually get a Trump effect breakdown here. And when we see that, and this does happen 30% of the time, what I would do in this situation is this would become the topping pattern. And sometimes you do see this happen, and this would have a target which would be down in the high 70s. And that would be actually sort of mid 80s actually. But I think we could go down lower than that. We will see how that goes. But the first thing to mention before we would get there is we would need to get through this rising megaphone support trend line. I called this as a target back in late 22 when we made this high here at 114.78 and established this beautiful resistance trend line here. And that, if we are going to go back and retest the high, I'd be leaning towards seeing a test of that before we did. But I think we are potentially in a bottoming process there, and I'm watching that carefully. All right, looking at ZB. ZB, I'm expecting to see higher here. Partially because we've got a pretty good, decent-looking TNX 60-minute sell signal on the RSI 14, and generally speaking, those will make target. Not always, but generally. We're also forming what I think is a bear flag, A, B, C, and I don't think the C is topped out yet. I think this has got a pretty good chance of going up with equities, and at the moment, as the people don't seem to be treating treasuries as a flight to safety destination, this has been going up with equities. We will see, but I think equities have probably got some more upside to do, and the obvious read here is that TNX, ZB has some more upside to do as well. CL, I did mention yesterday that quite often when you see an inverted head and shoulders or a head and shoulders fail, then you will get a head and shoulder pattern forming in the opposite direction, and right now that's kind of what we got here. So we've got this IHS, it's broken up with a target in the 69.8 area, and we've got this head and shoulders which is forming here, and we'd be forming the right shoulder on it. Ideal right shoulder high would be in about 64.1 to 2 area. And if we saw a breakdown, well, it would have a target in about the 58 area. But if we made it to 58, that would invalidate this inverted head and shoulders, because this right shoulder low is in the 58.2 area, and that would set up a move down to the retest the low here at about 54.5. How likely is that? Well, I think the economy is going to be slowing over the next few months, and a number of things get affected by slowing economic activity. Energies, copper, lumber. These things are all obvious things which are vulnerable to slowing growth, and oil's most definitely one of those. So I'm thinking that we may well just fail down into this. I quite like the target if we can make it up into 70. But what I would say is, we've been back testing broken support at 63.57, got a little above it obviously, but this is a really, really good place to fail if in fact we're looking at an extended breakdown below that support, because that support was an inflection point. It was a potential level bottom, but it's going the other way at the moment, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see this fail. So I'm watching to see how that performs today. NG, we've got a bit of positive divergence here, not delivered anything so far, but we've also got a decent looking little falling wedge here. It's not perfect, but the resistance trend line is certainly nice. I'm wondering about a rally happening here soon. Bigger picture, I'm thinking this may well be breaking down, and where, having got down this far, that we're much less likely to make it to the double bottom target of 5.75. I think we might see a breakdown through 3. Because again, this is sensitive to economic activity. Looking at gold, I was talking about this yesterday and saying that gold looked as though we've got this head and shoulders, which was obviously broken down with a target in about the 31.20 area. But I was looking at bullish looking setups on the other metals. Mainly silver, but I was looking at setups where we could be failing the topping patterns that are broken down on palladium and platinum, and this could be failing too. But to fail, it needs to get back up to this high here. Basically, if we get to 3400, then this head and shoulders has failed with the target back up at a retest of the high. Do we have an opportunity here to see a larger retracement? Definitely. While equities are going up, this has been very much a flight to safety trade. So while equities are rallying, there is definitely a case for gold going down. It doesn't have to though, and I'm watching this 3400 level to see whether or not this head and shoulders will fail. Looking at SI, we did go up yesterday. It looked like a bull flag, and it's delivered. Don't have an obvious resistance trend line here, and I have to say, on the bigger picture, I'm really looking at a nice double pair of targets in the 38 area. On palladium, we had a head and shoulders which broke down, and I was talking about the possibility that might fail. Here, I was talking about this inverted head and shoulder thing. This could argue to be an inverted head and shoulders, but it's not great. But I think this may well be a little double bottom reversing the setup. We haven't reversed yet, and we need to get over about the 968 area to invalidate this head and shoulders, but I'm thinking we might do that. Platinum is almost back at the highs. We had this very nice looking double top break down, and basically that's rejected back up to the highs. I'm expecting that to do a full retest of this high here, which is very close. We do have a possible weak 60-minute sell signal brewing, but I'm liking a retest of the high here, and it wouldn't surprise me if all of these went up in the short term. HG, we've got a possible rising wedge, and it's quite a nice rising wedge actually. It may just be expanding and setting up a less steep support trend line, because this is a very steep support trend line. But I'm thinking that we may be topping out here, and I have to say copper is one of the things which I'm not optimistic about in the event that the economy starts to contract, or at least grows less, and I'm expecting that to happen. Right, not really seeing an awful lot on currencies. I was saying quite a lot on the bigger picture charts, but the picture's more on the daily charts. So have a look at the video I recorded last night if you have a chance and you're interested in the currencies. KC, we've broken up over this declining resistance, and we've got an open target in the 398 area, and no particular reason to think that we aren't going to make it. I'm really liking that, and overall, this is a bull flag. which looks like it's breaking up. And that breakup would have a target up here in about the 415 area. Looking at the SB chart, this still looks like a bear flag. CC, nice looking double bottom, hasn't broken up yet, but if we see a sustained breakup over 9,500, this would have a target in about the 11,300 area. ZW, I was talking yesterday about a possible retest of this low coming, still thinking that may well be coming. On corn, this is looking less like a bull flag than it was before we saw this little breakdown here. It still could be. But I'm having doubts. 60-minute buy signal is fixed in the short term. Seeing where that ends up, it hasn't delivered much so far. Soy, this could well be a double top forming. I'm mystified at why soy has been as strong as it has been in recent weeks, given that so much of the soybean crop has gone to China, and that China appears to be working on getting all of that from somewhere else. So I'm wondering whether if the current tariffs come down, whether those orders are coming back. So I think soy is mystifyingly high. Soybean oil, we're seeing a little bit of a break up here. We had a double top, it broke down, it rejected back up into the high, and we are coming back in, and we've now retested this high here. Not sure about the dynamics for soybean oil. I'm less familiar with that than on soybeans, but I would have thought I'd be leaning towards some weakness here too, but I'm not seeing any sign of that at the moment. All right, let's have a look at CT. We've seen a break up here, and we've seen a full retest of this high. Could easily go higher. I do have a trend line up here, which is currently in about 73.5, 74 area, and that is a pretty nice trend line, and I'm wondering if it might be hit. Lumber, still a nice looking double bottom, still doing almost nothing, and I'm still doubtful about that because we have a large double top that's broken down, and I'm expecting to see targets lower down. Lumber again is very sensitive to economic activity. Now we haven't started seeing the economic numbers showing an economic slowdown come down, but these things take a while to feed through, and quite often it's quite regular that a recession has ended by the time the numbers have really confirmed that you're in it. Especially with revisions after the case and so on. So these things take a bit of time to come through. They're not the sort of thing you expect to see immediately, but I think the economy will be slowing here, and that's going to have an impact. Live cattle, we have made the IHS target. We retested this high. I'm not currently seeing any particular reason to think this is going to come down, but we are still testing these previous highs, and we haven't seen a convincing break over them yet. Lean hogs could be breaking down from little head and shoulders. Not sure how much confidence I'd have in this, but we do have an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, albeit one that fixed down here, and we've seen another leg up since then. A further leg up would probably fail it. We shall see. All right, let's have a look at questions. Yeah, my pleasure as always. Well, my pleasure as always, guys. All right, the big picture today is all about the daily middle bands. We need to see breaks over those, and I'll be watching that. If we see those breaks, then that opens up the trend lines that I've drawn in for the possible bear flags. On the bigger picture, I'm watching very, very carefully the changing tone at the White House. And there is much more of a feeling over the last week that Trump is becoming more sensitive to what's happening in the market. That could potentially extend this rally. I did say at the start of it that ideally it would last a couple of months, but that was hard to see. It's getting easier to see how it could last a couple of months, and possibly if it did that, how we can actually get back up into a retest of the high. And at big highs, equity indices, particularly SPX, really like double tops. So I am wondering about that. So anyway, I'll be keeping an open mind. We will see how they form. If we see perfect bear flags form and a raft of sell signals, then then the market has spoken, and chances are that's what we see. If we see breaks up through the trend lines I've put in and no obvious flags forming, then I will be wondering about a possible retest of the high. But I think we're a long way away from that at the moment. We'll see how it develops. All right, brilliant. In that case, that's a wrap. I will catch you guys tomorrow morning. All right, take care.